Joining me for the discussion are Scott Schober, a cybersecurity expert and CEO of Berkeley Varitronics Systems, and here in the studio, Ina Tangen, current affairs commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. First of all, Mr. Schober, explain to us the details of this proposal, please.
Well, certainly there's great concern, I think, for everybody, be it the U.S., be it in China, be it abroad, because some of these things that are being proposed would be extremely difficult to actually achieve. They would have a number of years to catch up, because if you think about it, all of the major carriers behind the 5G build-out have spent enormous sums of money and development of technology, and there's many partnerships formed. So for the U.S. to kind of jump in the middle of this would cause nothing but chaos, and it would slow down the actual build-out. So I think a lot more of this is probably talk and rhetoric than actual action that's going to take place, at least from my perspective. Now, there are certainly some challenges out there, because the U.S., you could see, strongly feels, and from the White House, that there is a high probability that if China wins the race to the 5G technology build-out, it could greatly affect security in the nation here within the United States. And I think they look back a lot on some of the history where there's been battles back and forth, be it with Huawei and Cisco and many other battles that have unfolded. And I think some of the trust has been broken down over time there, and they're reacting to that now, looking forward to the future build-out.
I see. Ina, explain a little bit first, why is 5G such a hotly contested topic?
Okay, first off, you have to understand 5G is not a thing. It's a set of standards that will basically increase your internet connectivity over your phone by 10 times. Not only 10 times as fast, but 10 times as many devices can connect to it. So what they do is they set up a 5G standard, and then everybody's making a race to it. Right now, Huawei, which is testing out their system actually in the Netherlands, funnily enough, along with Sony Ericsson, is getting quite close. They've done it. They've shown that it is capable, that they can reach these standards. And the reason that everyone is so concerned about this is because the connected world, when we start talking about big data, the ability to connect all of these sensors that are all around and put them into this big data and see what exactly is going on, and in some cases control these things. This is why people are starting to say, okay, wait a second, what is going on and what do we have to do to secure ourselves?
Yeah, how do you look at the fact that China has been used as the reason why they need to do that? Basically, I understand that the U.S. government wants to build all the infrastructure part for the 5G system before the possibility can be open to any Chinese companies being involved in that infrastructure construction. Ina.
Well, the 5G infrastructure is, I mean, everybody's racing towards it. There is, as has been pointed out by our friend in America, it is huge amounts of money, $600 million already by Huawei alone, with more being poured in every year. Every other company out there is trying to race to this standard. So, you know, when you start looking at everything that is on the line, yeah, it's very important. Why would the U.S. want to control this? Maybe there is some fear that China is getting a little bit ahead. I mean, even beyond 5G, what China has done with quantum entanglement, this idea that you can separate two molecules, put them with 1,400 kilometers apart, and when you do something to one, it automatically happens to another. There are no wires. And I think there might be some concern that the U.S. is behind on this race, and that they need to somehow be proactive and go at it. It might be just, as said, a bunch of symbols, just throwing it out there. Trump is not above sending white rabbits out and then denying that he's doing that, or just seeing what the reaction will be.
Yeah, Mr. Schober, from where you are in this business. Is it really possible that although China contributed greatly to the setting up of the international 5G standard, it is not possible for Chinese companies to go and spy on the US simply because it is, China played a big part in the standard settings phase?
Well, when it comes to spying and espionage, to be honest with you, China spies on the U.S. spies on China. All countries have espionage and they do spy on one another. The larger threat, I think, as your guest mentioned there, especially with 5G, it's a little bit different when we look back just a number of years to 3G. There was a very defined footprint and standards that were set where certain countries use certain technologies. The U.S. focused on CDMA deployment here very aggressively, yet if you go to different parts of Europe, it would be predominantly GSM for 3G, third-generation technologies. 5G is a little different. I look at it more as a global type of footprint for telecommunications, and again, tied in closely with the internet. And as was pointed out before, what is so different now is you have the IoT devices, Internet of Things. Everything we do, from our smartwatches, our smart homes, autonomous cars in the not-too-distant future, everything will be tied in wirelessly through a 5G conduit, this new network. So it's extremely powerful. Whoever rules this rules the world in a sense. So that's why everybody is racing so fast to get to the same endpoint.
Now, since the document was leaked, the plan has been strongly opposed by different parties, including the bosses of the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission, and CTIA, or the Wireless Association. Why would this plan cause so much rebound within these organizations?
Well, I think certainly if you look immediately, FCC took an immediate stance on this. CTIA, which we're certainly a member of, and we also weigh in on different matters for FCC, just to point that out. They've taken a strong stand after what just happened with net neutrality and repealing that back. They don't want to disrupt things that are already in the line in the sand, as it were. And what they've clearly said is, if the government, the U.S. government, steps in and tries to build out 5G technology, what it's going to do is going to stifle innovation. It's not going to happen as quickly. It's going to hurt all the investment from the privatized side, the wireless carriers, who have spent significant amount of money. It just doesn't make sense. They think the private sector can really drive innovation and drive investment, and I agree with that.
Well, unlike China, the U.S. telecommunications market is also shared by several big private companies which have already spent billions of dollars on 5G technology research and development work. Aina, so what will be the impacts on them if the government entirely or partly takes over the infrastructure?
Well, there'll be a mad scramble to be the one that whose technology is adopted, and this is really not something that they were anticipating. This is really, I mean, really out of the blue. Trump is supposed to be a pro-market guy. He's supposed to, say he's trying to encourage innovation and all this type of thing. And for him to throw this out there is a real non-starter. I mean, the chairman of the FCC, who he just recently appointed, just came out. He's an industry guy. He said, no, I would not agree to this.
Will the federal government has the funding necessary for that kind of infrastructure? Because President Trump talked about building up America's infrastructure, saying the state government need to pair what the federal government gives in any infrastructure project. Will that happen here?
Well, he's asked for $1.5 trillion. He has some sort of way in which he wants to leverage it. Basically, he'd have $300 trillion and try to use that to leverage local, state, and private funds and things like that. But none of this has been played out for real. It's not clear that he could do it. It's not clear that the government would be capable of bringing this to where it needs to be, and there would be a mad scramble. I think a lot of its industry people would be against him. There'd be a major play in Washington, D.C. as K Street ramped up to make sure that this never happened.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Schober, finally, are you worried that this plan would finally go through? If not, what kind of future philosophy are you seeing within the Trump administration that might get into what the market should decide?
Well, I think if this really played out more fully, reality is it's probably a combination of the two if it ever took light. In other words, the government can't do this on their own. It'd be decades behind. It only makes sense if there was a partnership of sorts between private and government working together. Maybe the private side, with the build out of the infrastructure that they've done to date, would work with the government, and the government would finance it and try to help fast track it working together. Unfortunately, when government gets involved in innovation and technology, it usually stifles it. So I don't see a big win for the U.S. government to jump in here and try to take over 5G build out and reinvent the wheel. It makes no sense from a technology perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Scott Schober, cybersecurity expert and CEO of Berkeley Varitronics Systems, and Ina Tangen, current affairs